Mariana Trench secrets. The descent begins in sunlight. The research submersible leaves the surface world behind, dropping through layers of blue that darken with every meter. The pressure gauge climbs steadily. 100 meters, 200, 500. At 1,000 meters, you enter the midnight zone, where the last traces of sunlight die. But you keep falling. 2,000 meters, 3,000, 4,000. The darkness is absolute now, broken only by the occasional flash of bioluminescent creatures drifting past the viewport like ghosts. At 6,000 meters, you pass the deepest point any human has reached without a submersible. At 8,000 meters, you've descended further than the height of Mount Everest. The pressure outside is crushing, over 7,000 pounds per square inch, enough to compact a human body into something the size of a baseball, enough to implode a submarine if there's even the slightest flaw in its construction. But you're not done falling, not even close. At 10,000 meters, you enter the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the ancient Greek underworld. This is deeper than the Grand Canyon is tall, deeper than commercial aircraft fly. You're in a place that only a handful of humans have ever seen. And still, you keep descending. 11,000 meters. The submersible's hull groans under the strain. Every bolt, every seal, every weld is being tested beyond what seems possible. The pressure is now over 15,000 pounds per square inch. 15,000! For perspective, a car tire is inflated to about 32 PSI. The pressure outside your vessel is almost 500 times that. And then, at 10,994 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, you touch bottom. You have reached Challenger Deep, the deepest point in Earth's oceans, the deepest point on the planet. The pressure here is 16,000 psi, 8 tons per square inch, the weight of 3 SUVs pressing down on every square inch of surface. At this depth, bones dissolve, calcium carbonate structures disintegrate. Scientists believed for decades that nothing with a skeleton could survive here. They were wrong. The Mariana Trench stretches like a scar across the western Pacific Ocean near Guam. It's a crescent-shaped depression in the seafloor, formed where the Pacific tectonic plate is being forced beneath the smaller Mariana plate. This isn't a gradual slope, it's a plunge. The trench is over 1,500 miles long and 43 miles wide on average. But it's the depth that defies comprehension, nearly 7 miles straight down. For most of human history, we couldn't reach it. The technology simply didn't exist. In 1960, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh became the first humans to descend to Challenger Deep in the bathyscaphe Trieste. They spent 20 minutes on the bottom, peering through a tiny viewport into the darkness. They saw something moving. A flatfish, they reported, and some shrimp. Then they ascended, and for the next 52 years, no human returned. When director James Cameron made his solo descent in 2012, he described the bottom as a lunar landscape, desolate and foreboding. The sediment on the floor was fine as talcum powder. The water was thick, almost syrupy from the pressure. And in his powerful lights, designed to illuminate this alien world, he saw very little moving. The place seemed almost dead, sterile, a desert of crushing pressure and eternal cold. But appearances, as science often proves, can be deceiving. The real exploration of the Mariana Trench began not with humans, but with robots. Remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, and autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, started making regular descents into the Hadal Zone in the early 2000s. These machines could stay down for hours, even days. They could collect samples, take measurements, and record video in ways that human-occupied vessels never could. And what they found shocked the scientific community. Life. Not sparse, struggling life clinging to existence, but abundant, diverse, thriving life. Life that had no business existing under conditions that should make it impossible. The pressure at Challenger Deep is so extreme that it fundamentally changes how matter behaves. Proteins denature, cell membranes rupture, the very chemistry of life as we understand it should cease to function. Organisms that evolved in shallower water, organisms with any kind of rigid structure, should be crushed instantly. Their bones should dissolve, their shells should implode, their cells should collapse. And yet, the cameras on these ROVs recorded fish. Not just any fish, but a species of snailfish, Pseudoliparus swiri, swimming calmly at depths exceeding 8,000 meters. These fish have no scales. Their bodies are gelatinous, almost translucent. Their bones are barely calcified, more cartilage than true bone. They've evolved to exist in a state that's almost liquid, their bodies offering no resistance to the pressure because they are the pressure. They're made of it, filled with it, part of it. When researchers analyzed tissue samples from these snailfish, they found something remarkable. The fish had extremely high concentrations of a chemical called trimethylamine and oxide, or TMAO. This organic compound acts as a pressure counteractant. It prevents proteins from being crushed and deformed by the extreme pressure. Essentially, these fish have evolved their own biochemical shield against conditions that should destroy any other vertebrate. But the snailfish were just the beginning. In 2014, researchers from Scripps Institution of Oceanography deployed a series of baited cameras and traps to the floor of the Mariana Trench. They called the mission the Hades Ecosystem Studies, or Hades Project, because if anywhere on Earth deserved that name, it was this place. The traps were loaded with mackerel, a luxury feast in an environment where food is scarce. Then they waited. When the equipment was retrieved and the footage reviewed, the scientists saw something that challenged everything they thought they knew about life's limits. Amphipods. Thousands of them. These are small crustaceans, relatives of the sand fleas you might see hopping on a beach. But these weren't small. They were enormous. Some specimens exceeded 12 inches in length, 20 times larger than their shallow water cousins. They swarmed the bait like a feeding frenzy, their pale, translucent bodies piling on top of each other. But what was most shocking wasn't their size or their number, it was their exoskeletons. Amphipods are arthropods, which means they have external shells made of chitin and minerals, including calcium carbonate. The same stuff that bones are made of, the same stuff that should dissolve at these depths. Researchers had long believed there was a calcium carbonate compensation depth, or CCD, below which no organism with calcium-based structures could survive. The pressure and the chemistry of the water at extreme depths should dissolve these structures faster than organisms can rebuild them. It's why you don't find clams or sea urchins or coral in the deep trenches. Their shells would simply vanish. But these amphipods had shells, functional, intact shells. So what was different? The answer lay in their biochemistry. When scientists analyzed the shells, they found they were impregnated with aluminum, not calcium alone, but aluminum compounds that stabilized the structure and prevented dissolution. These creatures had evolved a completely novel material science solution to a problem that shouldn't have been solvable. They'd literally invented a new kind of shell. And they'd done it in the dark, under 8 tons of pressure per square inch, in water just above freezing, in an environment with almost no food. They'd done the impossible as a matter of routine survival. The amphipods raised an obvious question. If they were thriving down here, what were they eating? Food in the deep ocean comes primarily from above. Dead organisms, feces, and organic matter drift down from the sunlit zones in a constant gentle rain called marine snow. But by the time it reaches the Hadal depths, most of it has already been consumed by organisms living at shallower levels. What reaches the bottom is sparse, degraded, and distributed across an enormous area. Yet the Hadal trenches support not just amphipods, but entire ecosystems. So where is the energy coming from? The answer involves both the trench's geography and their biology. The steep walls of trenches like the Mariana act as funnels, concentrating organic material that would otherwise be spread across the vast abyssal plains. Earthquakes, which are frequent in tectonically active trench zones, can trigger underwater landslides that dump massive amounts of sediment and organic matter into the depths. And then there are the occasional bonanzas, whale falls. When a whale dies and its carcass sinks to the ocean floor, it represents a sudden influx of tons of organic matter. A single whale fall can sustain a localized ecosystem for decades. Scavengers arrive first, including the giant amphipods. They strip the soft tissue in a matter of weeks. Then come the bone-eating worms, osedacs, which bore into the skeleton and extract nutrients from the marrow and oils trapped in the bones. Finally, bacteria colonize what remains, breaking down the last organic compounds. A whale fall is a deep-sea oasis, and in the trenches, these events are critical to sustaining life. But researchers have discovered something even more fundamental: chemosynthesis. In some hadal environments, particularly near tectonic plate boundaries, there are chemical seeps. Methane, hydrogen sulfide, and other compounds leach from the seafloor, and where these chemicals emerge, bacteria thrive. Not photosynthetic bacteria using sunlight, but chemosynthetic bacteria using chemical energy. These bacteria form the base of a food web that exists completely independent of the sun. On the floor of the Mariana Trench, there are microbial mats that glow faintly in the darkness, powered not by light but by chemistry. There are tube worms, relatives of those found at hydrothermal vents, that have no digestive system at all. They're just tubes filled with symbiotic bacteria that convert chemicals into nutrients. The worms provide a home, the bacteria provide food. It's a partnership forged in conditions that seem designed to prevent life from existing at all. But perhaps the most alien discovery in the Mariana Trench wasn't an animal at all. It was a microbe. In 2013, researchers analyzing sediment cores from Challenger Deep identified bacteria belonging to a group called xenophyophores. These single-celled organisms are enormous by microbial standards, some reaching 4 inches in diameter. They build intricate shells from sediment particles, cementing them together with organic secretions. What makes them remarkable isn't their size or their architecture, it's their resilience. Xenophyophores thrive in the Hadal Zone, and when researchers tested them, they found these organisms could survive rapid decompression. They could be brought to the surface, exposed to atmospheric pressure, a change of over 1,000-fold, and continue living. Most hadal organisms die almost instantly when brought up from the deep. The pressure differential is too extreme, but xenophyophores adapt. This suggested something profound. These organisms weren't just adapted to extreme pressure, they were adapted to pressure fluctuations, which raised a question: why would an organism living in one of the most stable environments on Earth, where pressure never changes, need to adapt to changing pressure? The answer may lie in the trench's violent tectonic activity. Earthquakes and subduction zones can temporarily alter local pressure. Underwater landslides can bury organisms and then expose them again. And there's another possibility, one that researchers are only beginning to explore. These organisms might be incredibly ancient. They might have evolved their pressure tolerance not at the bottom of the trench, but during a time when sea levels were dramatically different. During ice ages, when vast amounts of water were locked up in glaciers, ocean depths were shallower. As sea levels rose and fell over millions of years, these organisms adapted to survive the changes. They're not just living fossils, they're survivors of planetary climate shifts, still thriving in conditions that have remained stable for tens of thousands of years. The Mariana Trench also revealed something about our species that was less flattering. In 2018, a study analyzed tissue samples from amphipods collected at depths exceeding 10,000 meters. The researchers were looking for contaminants, specifically persistent organic pollutants like PCBs and flame retardants. These are industrial chemicals that have been banned in many countries for decades because of their toxicity and their tendency to accumulate in living tissue. The results were shocking. The hadal amphipods had some of the highest concentrations of these pollutants ever recorded in marine life, higher than animals living in some of the most polluted coastal regions, higher than creatures living near industrial waste sites. In the most remote, inaccessible place on Earth, in the deepest depths of the ocean, human contamination had arrived first. The mechanism is grimly efficient. These pollutants don't dissolve in water, they bind to organic particles. They hitch a ride on the marine snow that drifts down from the surface. And because the trenches act as sediment traps concentrating organic material, they also concentrate pollutants. The amphipods eat the contaminated detritus, predators eat the amphipods. The chemicals bioaccumulate, becoming more concentrated with each step up the food chain. In 2019, the first detailed survey of debris in the Mariana Trench found plastic, lots of it. Single-use bags, microplastics, fishing nets, candy wrappers with legible labels. One plastic bag was discovered at 10,898 meters, less than 100 meters from the deepest point on Earth. Plastic had beaten most marine biologists to the bottom of the ocean. There's a painful irony here. We've spent centuries believing the ocean was too vast to pollute, too deep to touch. We dumped waste into it, thinking it would simply disappear into the abyss. And in a way, it did. It disappeared into the Mariana Trench, into the bodies of animals that live in the one place we thought was beyond our reach. Among all the discoveries, one organism stands out as perhaps the most alien. Hirondella, an amphipod species found exclusively in the deepest trenches, has been recorded at depths exceeding 10,900 meters. It's pale, almost translucent, with long, delicate antennae and a body that looks too fragile to exist. But appearances deceive. Hirondella is built for this environment in ways that defy intuition. Its cell membranes contain high concentrations of unsaturated fatty acids, which remain fluid even in near-freezing temperatures and crushing pressure. Its proteins are stabilized by piezolites, small organic molecules that prevent pressure-induced deformation. Its metabolism is extraordinarily efficient, wringing every possible calorie from the scarce food available. But the most remarkable adaptation is neurological. Hirondella has an exceptionally fast neural response time. When researchers tested its reaction speed, they found it was significantly faster than shallow water relatives. This seems counterintuitive. Why would an organism living in the most stable, unchanging environment on Earth need rapid reflexes? The answer lies in competition. Food is scarce in the Hadal Zone. When a carcass or shower of organic material arrives, it's a race. The first organisms to arrive get the most food. Speed isn't just an advantage, it's the difference between eating and starving. Hirondella doesn't just survive at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, it dominates. It's the apex scavenger in an ecosystem that shouldn't exist, thriving through a combination of biochemical innovation and evolutionary refinement that took millions of years to perfect. When scientists brought specimens of Hirondella to the surface for study, they survived only minutes. The pressure change was too extreme. Their bodies, so perfectly adapted to 16,000 PSI, simply fell apart at 1 atmosphere. They're prisoners of their own perfection, unable to exist anywhere else in the ocean. The Hadal Zone isn't just their habitat, it's their prison and their kingdom simultaneously. The exploration of the Mariana Trench is far from complete. As of this writing, more people have walked on the moon than have descended to Challenger Deep. The number of hours humans have spent at the bottom of the trench is measured in single digits. We've spent more time on the surface of Mars via rovers than we've spent exploring the deepest point on our own planet. But the technology is improving. New generations of submersibles are being designed that can stay deeper for longer. Autonomous vehicles are mapping the trench floor in unprecedented detail. Genetic sampling is revealing entire branches of life we never knew existed. And with each dive, each sample, each hour of footage, the same pattern emerges. Life is more resilient, more creative, more adaptable than we ever imagined. The organisms of the Mariana Trench didn't just survive extreme conditions, they exploited them. They found niches in an environment that seems designed to be uninhabitable. They evolved solutions to problems that seem unsolvable. They exist in a place where bones dissolve, where pressure should crush cells, where darkness is absolute and food is almost non-existent. And they thrive. There's a broader implication here, one that extends beyond marine biology. For decades, astrobiologists have searched for life beyond Earth, focusing on planets and moons with conditions that resemble our own. Liquid water, moderate temperatures, atmospheric pressure similar to Earth's surface. The search for habitable zones has been guided by the assumption that life requires conditions similar to those in which life originated. But the Mariana Trench suggests otherwise. If life can exist at 16,000 psi in freezing darkness with minimal food and extreme chemistry, then the definition of habitable needs to be revised. Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, has an ocean beneath its frozen surface. The pressure at the bottom of that ocean could be similar or greater than the Mariana Trench. Enceladus, Saturn's moon, vents water into space from subsurface oceans. The conditions there are extreme by any standard. We used to think these were hostile environments, unlikely to harbor life. But if the Mariana Trench has taught us anything, it's that hostile is a matter of perspective. To Hirondella gigis, the surface of the ocean is hostile. Atmospheric pressure would kill it. Sunlight is alien. The comfortable, moderate conditions we consider normal are to a Hadal amphipod a death sentence. If life can evolve to thrive at the bottom of Earth's deepest trench, then there's no reason it couldn't evolve in the oceans of Europa or Enceladus. The universe may be far more alive than we've dared to imagine, and the proof is sitting at the bottom of our own ocean, waiting patiently in the dark. The Mariana Trench reminds us that Earth is more alien than we acknowledge. We live on the surface, a thin sunlit layer that represents less than 1% of the habitable volume of the planet. The vast majority of Earth's biosphere is underwater, and most of that is deep, cold, dark, under pressure that would destroy us in seconds. We think of our planet as explored, mapped, understood, but we've barely scratched the surface. The deep ocean remains one of the last true frontiers, as foreign and mysterious as any distant planet. The creatures that live there evolved along paths completely separate from terrestrial life. They face challenges we can barely comprehend and solve them in ways we're only beginning to understand. The Mariana Trench is 7 miles deep. 7 miles of water pressing down with a force of 8 tons per square inch. In that crushing darkness, where bones dissolve and nothing should survive, life has found a way, not just to survive, but to flourish, to diversify, to create ecosystems as complex and interdependent as any on land. We came looking for barren wasteland. We found alien life, not on Mars, not on Europa, right here at the bottom of the ocean, waiting for us to descend far enough to see it, waiting for us to realize that the most alien world we'll ever explore is the one we're already standing on. The question isn't whether life can survive in extreme conditions. The answer is how much more of Earth remains unexplored, unknown, alive in ways we haven't yet imagined. And the answer is most of it. Most of our planet is still a mystery, still alien, still waiting. At 16,000 psi, where bones dissolve and pressure reigns, life doesn't just exist, it thrives. And it's been there, thriving in the dark, for millions of years before we ever thought to look.